Hey, what's up, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Dharma Junkie podcast. I hope that this moment finds you well. On this episode, my guest is author Susan Gold. Her book, Toxic Family: Transforming Childhood Trauma into Adult Freedom, is exactly about that, about transforming the rather unfortunate events of our past into freedom in the here and now. And for me, that's a major topic because I don't know about y'all, but I definitely had some pretty traumatic experiences as a child. So this conversation hit really close to home for me, and I'm sure it will for most of you. Whether you like it or not, chances are you did experience some sort of trauma throughout life. It's just a matter of how much and the quality, right? But all that aside, we had a wonderful conversation that I think you'll really enjoy, and I can't wait for you to listen. Anyway, without further ado, Susan Gold.
You might catch yourself sliding in and out of a hallucinatory state. Just relax and enjoy it. Just relax and enjoy it.
This is an experiment in mind formation. Information. Forming, controlling, operating your mind and your brain. We're using digital techniques to overload, scramble, confuse, unfocus your mind. The natural state of the brain is chaos. Chaos is beautiful.
Susan Gold, how are you?
Hey, Justin. Sitting in Montana. You're sitting in Florida. Here we are.
That's it. How's Montana treating you?
It's bliss. I was happy in urban cities, but now I'm in rural bliss. I live in the number one redneck town in the state of Montana. I'm 4 miles from the Canadian border. I could walk.
That's amazing. So what was the impetus to move from the urban sprawl to the
Yeah. So I really didn't have one. I thought I'd stay in the state of California until my son graduated from college, and he's mushing through in 3 years instead of 4, but I couldn't hold out. That intuitive voice was just like, yeah, you may want to find a less congested space. Yeah, it's a little noisy here. Yeah, that 5G tower they just threw up on your neighbor's curb is really causing some problems for your dog at 5:30 every day. I don't know. I just it was a pretty loud voice saying you need space, you need space, you need space. So yeah, Montana was not even on my bucket list, Justin, but here I am reassigned.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes you just have to listen to the call, right?
I try to now.
Yeah, I feel that. It's like, yeah, sometimes that voice was screaming pretty loud and I ignored it. Maybe we should start listening to it. But so tell me about yourself. What is it that you do exactly?
Well, I'm a new author. Never thought I'd write, but published my first book was published for me in March of this year. And it's really changed my world. It's a memoir, and it's a taboo topic, toxic family, and how that structure and the lineage of family can impact one's earthly walk. So I had an amazing career matching celebrities to brands, and then in television producing, and in film producing. But I feel that this work is my mission. So I'm creating conversation around toxic family lines.
Right. Yeah, that's a pretty big topic. And I feel like that's a topic that most people can probably relate to. Probably not to the degree that others can, but I think everybody can relate to that in some sense. So
that says it all right there.
So, I mean, obviously you had some experience with a toxic family system. Would you want to share about that a little bit and like what?
Yeah, I didn't really. I knew something was awry very early on. But I didn't really have my hands around it until the same red flags started showing themselves in my own early adulthood. My dad's a genius astrophysicist. He's also got an issue with, or had an issue with, alcohol and womanizing and Narcissism. My mother soothed through food. And back then they prescribed diet pills for that issue, which were straight speed. So I was raised by an alcoholic and a speed freak with, I think, a mental illness issue. And it was not a stable platform. Let's just say that. And I wanted to get out. And I did the morning after I graduated high school. I was 17 and I wanted to get to New York City. And I did. By the time I was 19, I was living in Greenwich Village on my own. And then went there straight after college. But like I said, some of the same issues, argumentative relationships and drinking and lying when I could have easily told the truth, it started to tally up. And so the first thing I did was get help and found out that I may have my own issue with alcohol. So I got clean and sober probably before you were born. And found meditation not long after that.
Yeah. Meditation for me was also an important part of my recovery, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. So alcoholism sucks, right? Like I grew up in a family of drinkers. My mom was one of those kind of functional alcoholics, but stepdad was not so functioning. I mean, I guess he went to work, but he would also, kick my door in and beat the shit out of me on a regular basis. So probably not the best environment. So, I totally get it. And then, my experience was pretty much the same as yours. It's like I started seeing these patterns in myself and it's like, oh, maybe I should get a hold of that because it's going to get out of control real quick. And it did for a while. So, but did you ever experience any like issues with, with having, been put into the court system because of your drinking or anything like that? Or was it pretty well handled for a while? And then it was just like, oh, there was this realization and I should probably do something about it. Or what, how did the issue come up that you were like, I should probably not drink? And
well, first, I want to acknowledge what you just shared. And I'm really grateful that you had the courage to make yourself vulnerable. And I too had incredible violence and abuse of all kinds. I had a lot of abuse with my oldest brother, between my oldest brother, and his childhood is almost complete amnesia. And it's very painful for me now. And I have great love and respect for all my family members. But I just wanted to acknowledge what you shared.
Thank you.
I took a slug from a wine jug at work and I knew something was wrong with that. Also, I was like associating with some nefarious characters and losing track of my goals and found myself being sexually harassed and abused in the workplace. And I was like, something's wrong here. So those were the signals. And if I would have stayed drinking, I know I would have been in an institution, perhaps a jail, because I had that murderous rage come up and it was kicked up from the experience as a child. Definitely. My mother's mantra was, you're going to end up in an insane asylum. And I think I was 4.5 years clean, Justin, when I landed in a rehab for codependency, and it was also hooked in with addiction. And I was clinically depressed. I'd been suicidal since I was 6. That was my first suicidal ideation. And I felt like here I was confronting my mother's mantra and messaging. This was it, because they wanted me to take medication for the depression. Mm-hmm. And they had done blood work, and said I'm low in serotonin and this is going to boost you up. And I didn't want to do it because I didn't think you could be sober and take medication at the same time. Right. And so they were threatening that they were going to throw me into the psych ward that was attached to the rehab. And so I got down on my knees that night and I felt like I was confronting, my mother's vision. And I decided that, I wasn't going to take that route. So a young cherub, she was an angel. She was 17, heroin addict. This was her 5th rehab. And she found me in the hall and she's like, what's up? And I told her that I didn't want to take the medication. And she said, if you came to the hospital and you weren't an addict, you did the testing and they said they could help you, would you try it? So I tried it. I tried it, and I tried it off and on for 10 years. And I'm grateful that I learned about depression and I learned about alcoholism, and I've been in recovery for decades, because otherwise I don't think I would be here. I would be institutionalized in one way or the other. So I feel really grateful that, the path has been presented and I took the help that was presented and it actually worked for me.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a tremendous amount of gratitude that does come from that, right? Like knowing that you're in this position, it's like, oh, this is where I will more than likely end up if I don't get some sort of help. That was definitely my experience with treatment. I've also been to a rehabilitation center a couple times. I was a heroin addict for the better part of like 6 years, and alcoholism before that. So yeah, come by it honestly. But yeah.
So what led you to get clean?
I just didn't want to live that way anymore. Yeah, I was wrapped up in the judicial system quite a bit for a little while, as tends to happen when you're a heroin junkie. And I just got tired of living that way. I did like a year in jail, and apparently that didn't really send the message. Like, honestly, at the end of the day, I just didn't have any like real coping mechanisms, right? Like I just didn't have coping strategies. Nobody ever taught me like, hey, here's some things that you can do when shit gets rough without having to turn to drugs and alcohol to dull your experience. And so,
yeah, I was missing a couple of tools myself.
Yeah, I feel like most of us are, right? Like most of us that have struggled with addiction of any sorts, and especially addiction coupled with depression, or I don't want to use the term mental illness, but that's generally the term that gets thrown around. But yeah, I feel like most of us that have dealt with that have, it's normally like a multiple diagnosis, right? It's never just oh, you like drinking a lot. It's like, oh, well, why? Why do you like drinking so much, right? Like what's really going on here? So that was my experience with it, But I'm super grateful to just be in recovery today, because I just got tired of living that way. Quite honestly, it was like every day you have to wake up and figure out what you're going to do to make money that day. And I mean, not that we don't have to do that anyway, but I need far less money to survive these days than I thought I needed before. So that helps. But yeah. So that was my experience with it. But yeah, it's recovery is interesting. It's an interesting experience, just not using drugs and alcohol to try to change our reality and change our experience. And I feel like that's something that I am very grateful for, in that, like, I feel like most people don't ever get that opportunity, like, quite honestly, most people just will continue drinking, whether they view it as a problem or not. They will just continue to drink, and to be able to step into a life of recovery where it's like, I know I don't use anything is pretty weird. Considering that most of the world does use something, if we look at the numbers, like most people drink, most people do something, most people are on some sort of medication, most people are using something to change their experience of reality. So,
yeah, it's a pretty rough walk, this earthly thing we're doing here.
It's not easy, is it? It's not easy. If anybody ever told you it was easy, they were lying to you. It's simple, but not easy.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely going to read the fine print before I come in next time.
Right.
If there is a next time.
Yeah, for sure. I'd do it again. Why not? It'd be fun. I'd do it differently the next time, though. I say I would, but who knows? Who knows where I would be? But so that was essentially what got you into recovery, was just like, just reach the end of I can't keep going.
Yeah. No, I was having horrible anxiety in the back of my throat. It took a Walkman and sunglasses and a baseball hat to get around Manhattan. Like, God forbid I had to take the subway in the summer. I just felt like if anybody touched my skin, I was going to crack into a million pieces. And, I could have the same vodka bottle in my freezer for months. The problem was when I took it out, and I would black out and I would puke, and, I had a memory loss. And so, yeah, it was definitely an issue, and I was much better without it. But, the professional therapist that I went to, you know, I walked into his office and I said, my life is out of control and completely unmanageable. And he immediately started talking about, was there alcoholism in my family? How much did I drink? You know, did my father drink? I was like, dude, like, I got a lot of problems. What are we talking about this stuff for? You know, I need help. And so he told me, you know, while you're here in treatment with me, don't drink. And you need to learn more about your dad's alcoholism problem. And you need to learn more about being a child growing up with addiction in the family and how that affected you. That was genius, like genius. Cause I went for it hook, line, and sinker because I was sick and tired of how I was feeling. And I would have stood on my head in the middle of Fifth Avenue. I just would have done anything. And it's a good thing about me. Like, I do take suggestions. I am open. I will try something. Although I have to say meditation was freaking excruciating. I tried that.
So that's a good question. When you started meditating, like what kind of meditation were you doing at the beginning versus what your meditation practice looks like now?
Thanks for asking that. I was introduced by a Vipassana Buddhist. She'd done many long-term retreats, went to Japan, did the whole thing. She was my therapist, and she was a really wise woman, but it was so uncomfortable. We spent a half day retreat in her studio apartment in Manhattan, and I thought I was going to squirm out of my skin. And that was the introduction. And then I went to LA and was very lucky to be introduced to Shinzen Young. He was leading Vipassana retreats, and he also did a lot of Native American sweat lodges, and he was a sun dancer himself at the time. And it was a great community to be ushered into, but it was very formal. The practice was very formal, and we were encouraged to sit on our own and do the same practice. And I did religiously, like, you know, had to be on that cushion, and it was a certain amount of time, and it was very structured. And then it just didn't feel good anymore. So I stopped sitting on the cushion, and I started to connect more with nature, and I started to breathe and notice my breath. I was also doing endurance sport at the time, and following the black line on the pool for an hour and a half, you know, was helpful as well. Today, I don't know if it's just the energies and the transition that I'm feeling on this planet, but I'm drawn to the cushion more than ever. And I'm drawn to connecting with the earth, you know, without the rubber soles on. And I made a move from New York, LA, and am in rural Montana. And it's very easy to connect here. The sky is as big as they say it is.
Right. Yeah, I can imagine that it's a lot easier to kind of go in, you know, rather than like in Montana, as opposed to being in the commotion of New York or LA. It's a little bit easier, you know. Even we were encouraged in the Satipatthana to go to a secluded place, and it's like, oh well, I guess you found your secluded place now, right?
I've been reassigned for sure, Justin.
So I've noticed, at least with me, have you had this experience where it's like you'll be sitting and you're doing on the cushion practice, and as you said, everything was going well for a while, and then it just kind of felt like it was kind of falling flat, and you said you started connecting with nature more, and really just, you know, watching the breath and more in daily life than on the cushion. And for me, that's kind of where I've been at lately. Like my on the cushion practice was very consistent for a very long time. I would sit, you know, an hour in the morning and an hour at night for years. And then and lately, though, I've kind of stopped sitting like so much. Like I don't sit as much as I used to. Like really, I've only been sitting a handful of times throughout the week lately. And that's only been for the past couple months, but I've kind of had an ebb in my on the cushion practice, but it's really just taken more. It's really been more about continuity of mindfulness for me lately, rather than just on the cushion practice. Like my practice is is fully in daily life now, as opposed to just on the cushion practice. And I'm sure I'll get back on the cushion eventually. I can't imagine that I will never sit formally again, because I know that I will. But yeah, so I feel like sometimes you just need to take a break and just kind of recenter yourself. And for me, it felt like there was something just kind of missing from my practice, and I wasn't sure what it was. And I'm still not entirely sure what it is, but we'll figure it out.
I love that space that you're giving yourself to really allow the process to unfold and happen. So much of my life I've spent very rigid, very structured, very controlled. And it was actually progress for me to say, yeah, I'm going to try something a little differently. I'm not going to put the rules on and see what happens naturally.
Yeah, exactly. And so what was your experience with that? What, like, as far as just like letting the practice unfold in that way and not being so rigid with it? Do you feel like you gained like some good ground with that, or some traction in your practice, both on the cushion and off the cushion, just from taking those kind of breaks?
Well, I have to say there's compassion that's come into my heart in a new way. Just, I've heard about the inner child since my 20s. I think Alice Miller's book, The Drama of the Gifted Child, was out when I was in my 20s. And, I heard about it, but I didn't really want to take time for that. And I think, a series of events in the perfect storm led me to go deep inside my heart, and another unlayering of the muck and the mire and the duct tape and the acrylic glue came off the heart again. And I connected more deeply in an authentic way with that light that I find is in my heart, that soul space, that inner child that's walked this path. And there is a certain bliss in me discovering that freedom, that bow back from rigidity. It's almost like there were points that I was on the cushion to please Santa and Jesus and mommy and daddy and Grammy and grandpa. So to be able to say, hey, yeah, you know what? I don't feel like sitting silently, motionless at all today.
Yeah.
Is a triumph for someone like me.
Yeah, no, I feel that. Like I felt almost like, so for me, I felt like I was almost required to do it, right? Like especially if you're from the Vipassana lineage, like they really kind of beat that in your head. Like, no, you have to have continuity of practice all the time. And it's like, yeah, I don't feel like it though. Like today's, I just don't feel like it. And then the next day I didn't feel like it. And then the next day I didn't feel like it. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to take a break for a while. I owe that to myself. I really feel like I owed that to myself. And that was, kind of like you're saying, it was showing compassion towards myself. Like I don't have to be so rigid with my practice to still be a good practitioner, like meditation.
There's
Meditation and daily life aren't separate things anyway, right? Like, so the whole point is to bring that level of mindfulness off of the cushion. Like we don't have to spend so much time on the cushion.
The more that I take that layering away, that rigidity, and measure up to the bar layer, that's so easy for us addicts to grab onto, the more that I find I'm engaged in life from an authentic place and from a heart-centered space. I used to think I had to sit on that cushion for such and such a time, or I was not valid. And that's definite. That belief is broken, and that is freedom. And yeah.
So what made you decide to write your book?
So in 2007, I was told by an Irish seer I had a book to write, and I promptly shoved that under the closest carpet. And then in 2020, back-to-back intuitive said, you've got a book to write. And the third intuitive said, you've got 3 books to write. And I was like, fluff. Like before this turns into some kind of library, I guess I'll take a look at this. And I really didn't think, my personal and professional story would have that much impact But I sat down and I came at it like a bulldog producer, 15 minutes a day at the computer, whether I had something to write or not. Yeah, that sounds familiar, right?
Yeah.
And within 9 months, I had the first pass at a manuscript, but a really wise mentor said, okay, go back through and write it from little Susie's point of view. I was like, okay, I'll check that out. And it's not so much like the black and white on the pages changed, but my connection to the being that had walked through what I had with love and an open heart and a willingness to evolve.
Right.
That's what I connected with deeply. And it's been one of the greatest gifts of that experience. And then a publisher picked it up and they changed the title. So my title was Magical Illumination, Transforming Childhood Trauma into Adult Freedom. And I got the call, yeah, we're going to call this book Toxic Family. It's like, blah, really? Like, you're going Jerry Springer on me? Seriously? And I'm like, yeah, I don't want to throw my family under the bus. I have love and a connection for them. And I sat with it for 2 weeks and I really went through a lot of stuff. And then I came to the understanding that, the people that are going to be helped by this book are not going to come to a magical illumination title. That's taken me decades to get to that place.
Right.
And to really help people, my publishers write. So it was scarier to have, it was scarier to have the book published. It was harder maybe than even writing it, but it's helping people. Yeah. Strangers, family members.
Well, I think that was a good insight from the publisher, quite honestly. I think that's an excellent insight if we're being like really, really honest with ourselves, because that's so identifiable, right? Like the magic illumination, people don't really understand that, but they understand toxic family because they're like, oh yeah, no, I've experienced that. And that's kind of what the Buddha did, right? Like, so, after his awakening, he was like super excited and he's, running into town to tell everyone about his magical awakening. And, he comes across I think his name was Upaka. And he's like, hey, man. And he's like, the guy's, like, oh, what's up with you, man? Like, you're glowing. Are you a ghost? Are you a god? Like, what's up with you? You look amazing. He's like, no, I'm awake. I am the Tathagata. And the guy's like, oh, yeah, cool story, man. And just like walks away. Because like nobody understands the enlightenment part of it, right? Nobody understands the grand awakening. So in his first discourse, the setting of the wheel of Dharma into motion, he starts with the Four Noble Truths. And it's like, yeah, in life, like it's going to suck sometimes, because that's so identifiable, right? Like we can all relate to that. And I love that that's where the Buddha started, is like with the Four Noble Truths and with the understanding and the experience of like suffering in life. It's like we start with suffering because that is kind of the tie that binds us together in that sense, is that, yeah, we're all going through it. And so it's much, that was a good insight from your publisher. I really feel that was a good idea.
I'll let her know.
So have sales been so far? Good?
Yeah.
Popular?
Yeah, surprisingly so. I took the whole sales thing and put it up on the shelf. I thought that's not my business. My business was to get this book published and out. And I did have a stranger reach out to me saying that she had read a chapter. There's some stuff in a workbook in the appendix that have helped me, like exercises that have helped me.
Okay.
And she sat down on her meditation cushion and she just had all this insight, all these pieces, just like a big, massive download. So that was super cool, Justin, I have to say.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was going to be another one of my questions, is like, is the book essentially giving some of the techniques and things that you have used in your healing journey and just kind of sharing that with other people? Or is it more, I know it's a memoir, but are you sharing kind of some of the information about what has actually helped you work through some of these childhood issues? And
so I didn't hold back. I'm a truth teller. And I wanted to start the conversation on the taboo topic. So it's not for the faint of heart. I have a pretty difficult upbringing, as you did. And so I really share it graphically. And I stay with that theme throughout. So it's a very honest telling of my walk. And then there is an appendix. And yes, there are exercises that I've used, including meditative exercises. And I thought for me, like, that was a throwaway. And again, my publisher's like, yeah, no, hone that down. Not everybody knows what as far as experiential ways to walk through toxicity and cleanse trauma within the body. So what I've really learned is, talk therapy was great to get a storyline down. But what's really been transformative are more somatic modalities. So that means like going into my body and exploring those trauma pockets, color, texture, timeline, present, ancient. And, I find a lot of us carry a lot of crap that has nothing to do with us. It's like 7 generations ago, and we're still dragging it around.
Right.
So the somatic ways of being have really been what's transformed me on a cellular level, and that includes meditation.
Right on. When did you start really getting into some of the somatic work? Like, how long have you been doing some of that work?
So, I've been drawn to that my entire life. I was a trained dancer as a little kid, so I've always responded through my body. And I dabbled. I was doing scream therapy before it was chic, and EFT in the 90s. But I have to say, it really came full force. I was going through a divorce, and my greatest guru as a teacher is my ex-husband, as far as learning my own power. He took up residence in the master bedroom and wouldn't leave the house for the year it took for the divorce to be completed. And I, by choice, took a mattress and drug it into a partial conversion in the garage. And that became my monastery. I held no contact, no verbal contact, and no eye contact. So those retreats really came in handy, as did my endurance athletic training. And this was a man that I really loved and cherished. But that I knew that was the way to extricate myself and to complete this process of divorce. And that's really when I went deep in somatic therapies. That's when I did modalities where it was specific, clearing to emotion, and I want to say content and textures and sensations in my body, and shift them and replace them with golden light. And that's what helped me walk through that year period it took to write this man a 6-figure check so he could be on to his next source of supply. And that's how I learned compassion for myself for the first time in a deep way.
Yeah, I can imagine. So that's quite the story. Yeah. Wow. That had to be a tense year.
It was a challenge, but it was meant to be. That marriage was well past its expiration date. I didn't want to walk away from it. I was trying to hold together with mediation and an agreement to bring fiscal sort of integrity to the relationship. And I thought, wow, my marriage is going to be safe, because we were down to the last bone of contention. And I was so happy. And that's when he folded his arms and his eyes went in those lizard-like slits. And he said, I'm hiring an attorney and I'm filing for divorce. And I heard that intuitive voice so strong come over my right shoulder and into my heart, saying, this is the universe doing for you what you cannot do for yourself.
Right. Wow. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. The divorce is never an easy thing, right? Like, and I can only imagine how much more, I don't know, emotional it would have been for me having had to cohabitate in the same house for a year, like while going through that process. Yeah, that's pretty profound. Yeah. God.
I think, Justin, that was the billboard it took to fall on my head to see the reality of it. Ending up in a home I bought and paid for and maintained for our family in the partial conversion, like it was
Right.
in the garage
Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
black widows and the rats rustling under the dryer. And I mean, yeah, it was a pretty heavy experience, but it was the perfect mirror of reflection to see how I was treating myself and what I was allowing. And that was painful, all for the security of having another. So I got to see my codependence
Right.
at a deep, deep level.
Do you go to any kind of like and this is kind of a personal question, but do you attend any kind of like Codependence Anonymous, like Coda meetings or anything like that? Did you ever do any of
So I went to about every A there was,
that?
for the first 5 years of my recovery and up till 16, I went to the main ones. I never really dug the Coda ones. I don't know why.
Right.
Or the Al-Anon ones, but if there was an A behind it, I'm definitely familiar with it.
No,
And
it's
they've all been helpful, but I want to say for me, ultimately, and if I thought I was going to pick up a drink or a drug, I'd run back to NEA. I wouldn't care what it was, but I haven't been in years because I've really come into contact with the fact that I am an empath. I can sense the emotions in a room and a heartbeat and size it up. That's what kept me safe
right.
a lot of my life. I'm highly intuitive.
Yeah.
I was quite telepathic at points in my life, which really gets clear after a 10-day retreat. But yeah, I believe that the A programs are primarily for narcissists and they can backfire on an empath. That point a finger out and three fingers come back at you. An empath can take that to new levels. And I stayed in some relationships that maybe I should have stepped out of before.
Right. No,
So I'm very careful about that now.
no, I definitely get that. Yeah, the A meetings can get a little weird, huh? I know that's been my experience with them. It's like, and I find so much value in some of the work, in some of the step work, but it really, especially here in Florida. So I can only speak from my experience with those programs and really only my experience with those programs in the particular location that I'm at. But there's a lot of new recovery here. It's like very my home group is kind of like ground zero for newly recovering addicts, and just the energy is just so like so chaotic in there. But there's some people just, and I say this coming from a place of experience. It's like there's still some resentment that I think most addicts hold on to for quite a while, and it can take a while to work through that. But there's an attitude in the rooms of some of the particular A groups that I will not necessarily mention, but it's just so aggressive. It's just so aggressive, and there's so much shame and so much anger in those rooms. And that can make recovery a little more difficult. Trying to work around people's personalities.
Well, yeah, that's why they say principles before personalities and all that stuff. But I have to say, I'm grateful it was there for me, but I was also grateful to wake up to the honest fact of it is not a hotbed of mental health. That's wwhy people are there,
It is not. It is not. That's an excellent way of putting it. It is not a hotbed of mental health. It's definitely a hotbed of some mental health issues for sure. But just like you were saying, of course, that's generally why people are in that room in the first place. And I feel like if mental health was addressed in any kind of a real way, if people were offered any kind of real assistance with their mental health, oftentimes it wouldn't end in addiction, and it wouldn't end up, you wouldn't end up in one of the A rooms, but that is not the way it is, unfortunately. But as well as I do that at its core, like addiction is a mental health issue. It's like untreated mental health that you're trying to treat with external things. Essentially, at least that's been my experience with it. Is like I have some issues that I was trying to self-medicate with other substances, but really, if you just get in and do the ugly work, like you don't need to do that anymore. But we don't know that until we know it, right? Like that's the big thing.
Yeah, those rooms really helped me to learn about myself, about others, about my processes, and gave me a lot of really helpful tools. So, I don't want to bash it. And again, I would run straight back there if I felt my sobriety was at risk.
Oh, I still go. I still go to meetings. And that's saying that I do have my issues with some of those organizations and then just the way that they do things, but I don't not go because of that, right? Like again, principles over personalities, and that work is very valuable. I tell people that want nothing to do with 12-step meetings or anything. I'm like, you should probably at least check out the steps and like maybe do a round of steps with somebody, because they're so beneficial, just for looking at your own bullshit. At the end of the day, it's like, okay, here I can look on paper and see all the ways that I have fucked up. And like, but when we start like really turning the lens on like why did we do those things? What's at the root of that? And that's what I really loved about Buddhist practices. It's not treating symptoms. It's like, let's get to the root cause of why we have these behaviors. That's what really was so profoundly moving for me about Buddhist practice. Was like, okay, well, let's address what's really going on under the surface here, rather than just treating these surface level these surface level things that we do in response to our trauma. Like let's work on the actual trauma itself. So, and I've been in recovery for, I don't know, a while now. Not probably not as long as you have, but I've definitely been in recovery for a minute. But it still ebbs and flows, man. I don't think about using ever, but I certainly think about changing my reality still sometimes. not through drugs or alcohol, but like, man, I would definitely like things to be different than they are in this moment. Not digging the present time experience. But here we are. We're doing everything we can. But yeah, I recommend anybody to at least check if you're experiencing drug or alcohol issues, to at least give the rooms a chance for a little while, because in the fellowship, I think, is one of the reasons that it works so well, right? I think it's just having other people that we can relate to, because so often when we are experiencing addiction with drugs or alcohol, we don't really have anyone in our lives that we can connect to on that level, because they just don't understand. They really just don't understand. People that have never experienced like a true addiction, they just don't understand it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So what does your recovery look like these days? What do you do for recovery? You pretty much just cruising it at this point, or do you ever
Yeah, pretty much so. And I know the signs. Like when I start to compulsively clean, like as if my life depended on it, I was like, ooh, what's up here? Yeah, what fear's up? Yeah, it's funny how, you put the alcohol down, the drugs down, whatever, something else it's going to be food. It's going to be money. It's going to be, for me, it was endurance athletics. And then that persona got ripped away.
Right.
Yeah. So, I'm cognizant and I can see when it's coming up. And then, I'll call a friend for support who knows, or I'll sit, or I'll go for a walk. I'll breathe. I'll put the mop down.
Yeah, that was kind of my thing as well. Like my addiction just went to the gym, basically. So yeah, I just got really into exercise and And that's another, another really a form of meditation for me is just going and going to the gym, just, working with the weights and getting on the treadmill. And I love that stuff. It's definitely a better addiction to have. And, people say, oh, you're just trading one addiction for another. It's like, yeah, maybe so. But if I can do that, if I can, just swap one for the other, I'll swap, heroin for the gym. Sure. That sounds like a pretty good payoff right there. And so I probably it's interesting to go from years of drug and alcohol dependency to just like being in the best shape of my life. It's like that's kind of a weird switch. But I can't imagine it any other way at this point. But we just do things. I feel like if we can find some sort of healthy outlet for those times, right? Like that's really the biggest thing. And it doesn't matter what that looks like for you as an individual, but just finding something healthy to put our energy into,
I love this pause.
I like silence. Some people feel they need to fill the silence at all times, but not me. I kind of enjoy it. We so rarely get moments of silence in life.
Yeah, it's a real beautiful thing now to be able to just allow that space to come in and happen and feel safe.
I concur for sure. So do you have any more books planned, or you said you were intuitively told you have 3 books? So we got one down. What's coming? What's on?
Yeah, I'm like, universe, fluff you. I'm not picking up the pen or the computer and
like I need
all right now. I was throwing around some topics that might be interesting, but I don't feel really set on anything just yet. Yeah. And it may not be a book structure. It may be some videos or I don't know. It could be something else. And I'm sort of hanging out and we'll see what happens. I'm trying to stay open, Justin.
Right. Yeah. Just enjoy the time. I can't recommend that enough to people, right? Just taking time to just enjoy your life. We get so wrapped up in trying to be something or be somebody, wearing all these different masks. But at the end of the day, if we can just take and just be, right? There's so much power in just being and, getting rid of all of the societal structures and all the weights that are placed on us by that. And just really stepping into who we are rather than who we're told to be or who we think we should be or who we even think we are, really challenging our belief systems and around all of that.
Yeah, and I've experienced some wacky belief systems around all that stuff. It's been a new awakening to even dip my big toe in that area. And I'm grateful that I have the feeling of safety around me now and within me that I can actually start to do that. And I'm stunned that it's so foreign.
Right. I think it is very foreign for most people. Yeah. I think, from right from the jump, we're told, that, well, this is your name and this is, you're of this faith and you're all of these things. And at the end of the day, once you clear all that away, it's like, well, who am I? Who am I really? And then like that journey to figure that out is a pretty profound journey for people to undertake. And I don't think that most people ever really do, and that's sad for me. It's like most people just believe everything they're told for the rest of their lives. And it's like, maybe look into that a little.
Yeah, well, that's the beauty of your podcast because you're taking time to really explore that and to have those conversations when you do have them and producing such great content and valuable content for those that you're reaching. So I just want to applaud you and I want to thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you for being a guest. I really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation. It's been lovely. So where can people find you at if they want to hear more about your work and what you're doing and just learn about who you are?
So I used to just blow this part off so fast because I don't like that digital marketing cacophony and make it a sale at the end of the great conversation I've just had. But if you feel moved, just go to susangold.us. It's all there, and the book's on Amazon and all the places, and we'll probably link that in the show notes. But really, I'm welcoming you to just come have a chat with me. I'd really like to hear your story, and there's all sorts of free stuff at susangold.us.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. I really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation with me, and I hope you enjoy your day in beautiful Montana. I'm sure you will.
And it was bliss to sit with the mandala from Florida that I see behind you. Thank you, Justin.
Thank you so much. Thanks again to Susan for being on the show. And if you would like to get in touch with her, you can find her at susangold.us. And be sure to check out her book, Toxic Families. Thanks again for listening. As always, this has been Dharma Junkie. I'm Justin. Peace. You earned it.